The crimson sand of Xerion Prime stretched endlessly under the twin suns, creating a landscape that looked like spilled blood across the desert floor. Zarath pressed her back against the jagged rocks, her purple skin glistening with sweat and something darker. Her breath came in sharp gasps as she clutched the energy wound in her side, the weapon burns still smoking from her former comrade's betrayal. She had been the finest warrior in the Keltheran Imperial Guard, trained since childhood to fight and die for the Empire. Her 4 arms had wielded plasma blades with deadly precision, her enhanced reflexes allowing her to move faster than most species could even perceive. The golden markings across her face marked her as nobility, a daughter of one of the oldest military families in Keltheran space. But now she was nothing more than prey. "You should have stayed loyal to the old ways, Zarath," Commander Veltar had sneered as his soldiers surrounded her on the transport ship. "The humans are vermin, not worthy of our protection treaties." She had discovered their plan to massacre the human colony on Kepler 442b. 300,000 innocent civilians would have died if she hadn't tried to warn the Terran Defense Force. Her own people called it treason. She called it honor. The betrayal had been swift and brutal. Her own unit, warriors she had fought beside for decades, had turned their weapons on her without hesitation. They had left her for dead on this desolate world, assuming the hostile environment would finish what their plasma rifles had started. Zarath forced herself to move, each step sending waves of agony through her tall frame. Her legs, powerful enough to leap 20 feet vertically, now trembled with each movement. The twin suns were setting, and soon the temperature would drop below freezing. In her weakened state, she wouldn't survive the night. The sound of engines made her freeze. A small ship was descending through the orange sky, its design unfamiliar. As it landed 50 yards away, Zarath recognized the angular hull and blue-white exhaust signature. Human. Her training told her to hide. Humans were supposed to be weak, cowardly creatures who relied on technology to compensate for their inferior biology. But as the airlock hissed open and a figure emerged, she found herself studying him with professional interest. He was tall for a human, probably 6.5 feet, with short dark hair and skin tanned by countless suns. He wore simple clothes under light armor and carried a rifle that looked primitive compared to Keltheran weapons. What struck her most were his eyes as he scanned the area. They held an alertness and intelligence that contradicted everything her people had taught her about humans. Marcus Chen had been tracking the unknown ship's distress beacon for 6 hours across this wasteland. As a salvage operator working the outer rim, he had learned to read situations quickly. The energy signatures he had detected suggested a battle, and the scattered debris field in orbit told him someone had been left behind. He spotted movement among the rocks and raised his rifle, then lowered it immediately. The figure stumbling toward him was clearly wounded and posed no immediate threat. As she came closer, Marcus felt his breath catch. He had seen Keltherans before, but never one like this. She was magnificent, even injured. Her purple skin caught the dying light of the suns, and the golden tattoos across her face seemed to glow. 4 arms, each powerful enough to crush a human skull, hung at her sides. Her height made her tower over him, even in her weakened state. But it was her eyes that held him frozen. They were deep violet, filled with pain but also with fierce pride that refused to break. Zarath stopped 20 feet away, swaying slightly. She spoke in perfect Terran standard, though her accent was thick. "Human. I am Zarath, daughter of House Morthek. I claim right of honorable death in combat." Marcus blinked in confusion. "You want me to kill you? I am dying already. Grant me the warrior's end I deserve." She straightened with obvious effort, her secondary arms reaching for weapons that were no longer there. Instead of raising his rifle, Marcus slung it across his back and approached slowly, hands visible. "How about we skip the dying part and focus on getting you patched up instead?" Zarath took an unsteady step backward. "You mock me, human." Name's Marcus, and I'm not mocking anyone. He gestured toward the smoking wound in her side. But if we don't get that treated soon, you won't need my help dying. She studied his face, searching for deception. In Keltharan society, showing weakness to an enemy was unthinkable. Accepting help was worse than death. But something in this human's expression was different from what she expected. There was no cruelty, no desire to exploit her vulnerability. Just genuine concern. "Why would you help me?" she asked. Marcus shrugged. "Because you need it. Does there have to be another reason?" The simple honesty of his answer caught her off guard. She had spent her entire life in a culture where every action had political implications, where kindness was seen as weakness and mercy was a luxury only the strong could afford. Yet this human, supposedly from an inferior species, was offering aid to someone who could have been his enemy. Her legs finally gave out, and she collapsed to her knees in the sand. Marcus moved quickly, catching her before she could fall completely. The contact sent shock waves through both of them. Her skin was fever hot, and he could feel the incredible strength in her limbs even in her weakened state. For Zarath. It was the first time in decades that someone had touched her with gentleness instead of violence. "Easy there," Marcus said, supporting her weight. "My ship's got a medical bay. Basic, but it should handle whatever this is." "You would bring a Keltharan warrior aboard your vessel?" she gasped. "I'd bring anyone aboard who needed help," he replied, already helping her toward the ship. "Though I have to ask, what's a Keltharan doing alone on Zarian Prime? This place isn't exactly on any trade routes." Zarath was quiet for a long moment as they walked. The human's strength surprised her. He was supporting nearly half her weight without apparent strain, and his endurance seemed remarkable for such a supposedly frail species. "I was betrayed," she said finally. "My own people left me here to die." Marcus glanced at her. "What did you do to make them that angry?" "I tried to save human lives." He stopped walking, studying her face. "You're serious?" 300,000 of your people on Kepler 442b. My unit was ordered to eliminate them during treaty negotiations. I attempted to warn your defense force." She met his eyes steadily. "My commander considered this treason." Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the dropping temperature. "A massacre. They were planning a massacre." "Yes. While your diplomats believed they were negotiating in good faith, my people intended to cleanse the sector of human presence." Her voice was bitter. "I could not allow it." They had reached his ship, a modified cargo hauler called the Second Chance. Marcus helped her up the loading ramp, his mind reeling. This alien warrior had risked everything to save people she had never met. From a species her own people considered inferior, she had chosen honor over loyalty, compassion over duty. The medical bay was cramped but well-equipped. Marcus helped Zarath onto the examination table, trying not to stare as she removed her damaged armor. The energy burns were worse than he had thought, but they hadn't hit any vital organs. "This is going to hurt," he warned as he prepared the surgical laser. "I am a warrior of the Imperial Guard," she replied with pride. "I do not fear pain." As Marcus began working on her wounds, he found himself impressed by her stoicism. She never cried out, never flinched, though he could see the agony in her eyes. Her people might consider her a traitor, but she had more courage than anyone he had ever met. "Why did you do it?" he asked as he sealed the last of the energy burns. "Risk everything for humans you'd never met?" Zarath was quiet for a long time, staring at the ceiling. "Because it was right," she said finally. "My people speak of honor, but there is no honor in slaughtering the innocent. Your species may be different from mine, but you have children, families, dreams. You deserve to live as much as any Keltharan." Marcus felt something shift inside his chest as he looked at her. Here was someone who had lost everything for doing what she believed was right. Her own people had tried to kill her, left her to die alone on a hostile world, and she still spoke of honor and righteousness without a trace of self-pity. "Well," he said, cleaning his hands, "looks like you're going to live. The wounds are sealed, but you'll need time to recover your strength." "I have no ship, no resources, no way to contact your defense force," Zarath said. "The treaty signing is in 3 days. Without warning, those people will die." Marcus was already moving toward the pilot's chair. "Then we'd better get moving." She struggled to sit up. "You would risk your life based on the word of a traitor?" "You're not a traitor," Marcus said firmly, beginning the engine startup sequence. "Traitors betray their principles for personal gain. You sacrificed everything for your principles. There's a difference." As the second chance lifted off from Zerion Prime, Zarath watched the human pilot with growing amazement. His hands moved across the controls with practiced efficiency, his jaw set with determination. He was risking his ship, his freedom, possibly his life, to help complete strangers based on the word of an alien who should have been his enemy. "I do not understand your species," she said. Marcus glanced back at her with a slight smile. "Most of the time, neither do we. But maybe that's not always a bad thing." The stars streamed past as they jumped to hyperspace, racing against time to prevent a massacre. In the medical bay, an alien warrior who had lost everything began to understand that perhaps she had found something even more valuable in return. And in the pilot's seat, a human salvage operator realized that sometimes the most important rescues had nothing to do with salvage at all. The second chance drifted through hyperspace, its hull humming with the gentle vibration of the quantum drive. Marcus checked the navigation display for the 10th time in an hour. 26 hours until they reached Kepler 442b, assuming nothing went wrong. He glanced toward the medical bay where Zarath had been resting for the past 6 hours. She wasn't resting anymore. The Keltharan warrior was doing what appeared to be some kind of exercise routine in the cargo hold, her forearms moving through complex patterns that looked like a deadly dance. Despite her recent injuries, she moved with fluid grace that made Marcus pause to watch. Her recovery speed was incredible, even by alien standards. "You should be resting," he called out as he approached. Zarath completed a spinning kick that would have decapitated most opponents before turning to face him. "Rest is for the weak. I must regain my strength if I am to be of any use in the coming battle." "Battle?" Marcus raised an eyebrow. "I was thinking more along the lines of sending a warning transmission and letting the defense force handle things." She stared at him with those violet eyes. "You believe a simple message will be enough? My people will have planned for such possibilities. They will jam communications, create false signals. The only way to ensure the warning reaches the right people is to deliver it personally." Marcus had been afraid she would say something like that. "And how exactly do we get past an entire Keltharan fleet in a cargo hauler?" "We think like humans," Zarath said, surprising him. "My people expect direct confrontation, overwhelming force, honorable battle. They will not expect subtlety and deception." "You make us sound sneaky. Is that not what your species excels at? Finding unexpected solutions to impossible problems?" She studied his face. "You rescued me when anyone else would have left me to die. You are taking enormous risks based on the word of someone your people would consider an enemy. This is not logical behavior." Marcus leaned against the bulkhead. "Maybe not. But sometimes logic isn't everything." "Explain." He was quiet for a moment, trying to find the right words. "Where I come from, we have a saying. It's not the size of the dog in the fight, it's the size of the fight in the dog. Humans might not be the strongest or fastest species in the galaxy, but we don't give up. We find another way." Zarath tilted her head. An expression he was learning meant curiosity. "Your people are warriors despite your physical limitations?" We're survivors, Marcus corrected. Big difference. Over the next several hours, as they traveled through the strange twilight of hyperspace, Marcus found himself learning more about his unexpected passenger. Zarath had been bred for war from birth, trained in combat before she could properly walk. Her family lineage could be traced back 3,000 years, all warriors in service to the Keltheran Empire. "I have killed over 200 enemies in battle," she said matter-of-factly as they shared a meal in the small galley. "It was considered a mark of honor." "And now?" Marcus asked. "Now I wonder how many of them had families, children, dreams they would never fulfill." She picked at the human rations with obvious distaste. "How do you consume this substance?" Marcus laughed. "It's called food, and you get used to it, though I admit, military rations aren't exactly fine dining." "Your laughter," Zarath said suddenly. "It is not what I expected." "What did you expect?" "Keltharans laugh to show dominance or cruelty. Yours is—" She searched for the word. "Different. Warm." The simple observation hit Marcus harder than it should have. He realized he had been studying her just as intently. The way she moved with predatory grace even in the confined space of his ship. How her golden facial markings seemed to shift in different lighting. The incredible intelligence behind those violet eyes that her people had wasted on simple warfare. Their conversation was interrupted by the ship's proximity alarms. Marcus rushed to the cockpit, Zarath close behind. The scanner showed 3 ships dropping out of hyperspace directly in their path. "Keltheran hunter-killers," Zarath identified grimly. "They have found us." "How is that possible? We're in deep space." "My people placed a tracking implant in all Imperial Guard members. I had forgotten." She touched a spot behind her left ear. "They will take me back for public execution as an example to others." Marcus was already changing course, but the hunter-killers were faster. Energy blasts flashed past the Second Chance's cockpit as the pursuit began. The cargo hauler shuddered under the impact of near misses. "Can we fight them?" Marcus asked, throwing the ship into a spiraling dive. 3 hunter-killers against a cargo vessel?" Zarath shook her head. "It would be like a child fighting trained warriors." "Then we do what humans do best," Marcus said grimly. "We cheat." He dove toward a nearby asteroid field, the Second Chance groaning under the strain of rapid maneuvers. The Keltheran ships followed, their superior firepower beginning to tell as shots found their mark. Warning lights flashed across the control panel. "Hull breach in Section 4, Marcus reported. "We can't take much more of this." Zarath studied the tactical display with professional interest. "The lead ship is Commander Veltar's personal vessel. He will want to capture me alive for interrogation." "That's not happening," Marcus said firmly. The certainty in his voice made her look at him sharply. This human, this supposed inferior being, was risking his life to protect her. Not for money, not for political advantage, but simply because he had given his word. It was more honor than she had seen from her own people in decades of service. "There!" She pointed to a large asteroid with deep crevices. "If you can reach that formation—" Marcus understood immediately. He dove toward the asteroid, the hunter-killers closing behind them. At the last second, he killed the engines and used the ship's maneuvering thrusters to slip into a narrow canyon barely wider than the Second Chance's hull. The Keltheran ships overshot, their larger size preventing them from following. But Marcus knew it was only a temporary reprieve. They would circle back and find another approach. "The tracking device," he said. "Can you remove it?" Zarath nodded. "But the procedure is painful and dangerous without proper surgical equipment." "Do it." She stared at him. "You would risk my death to prevent my capture?" "I'd risk everything to prevent your capture," Marcus replied simply. The words hung in the air between them, laden with meaning neither was quite ready to acknowledge. Zareth felt something stir in her chest, an emotion she had no name for. In Keltharan culture, such devotion was reserved for blood family or sworn battle brothers. This human owed her nothing, yet he spoke as if her freedom was worth his life. Using a plasma cutter from the ship's toolkit, Marcus helped her remove the tracking implant. Zareth endured the procedure without sound, though he could see the agony in her eyes. When it was finished, he carefully sealed the wound with medical gel. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank me when we're out of this," Marcus replied, but his voice was gentler than usual. They waited in the asteroid's shadow for 2 hours before the hunter-killers gave up their search and jumped back to hyperspace. Marcus carefully piloted the Second Chance out of the canyon and resumed course for Kepler 442b. "They will assume I am dead," Zareth observed. "When they do not find wreckage, they will believe the asteroid destroyed us completely." "Good. That buys us time." She was studying him again with that intense gaze. "Why did you save me?" "The truth, human." Marcus was quiet for a long moment, his hands steady on the controls. "Because the moment I saw you standing there, asking for an honorable death instead of begging for mercy, I knew you were someone worth saving. Your people call you a traitor, but you're the most honorable person I've ever met." Zareth felt her breath catch. In her culture, honor was everything, but it was honor defined by obedience and tradition. This human saw honor differently. He saw it in her choice to protect the innocent, in her willingness to sacrifice everything for what she believed was right. "I do not understand your species," she said again, but this time it sounded more like admiration than confusion. "Maybe that's okay," Marcus replied. "Maybe understanding isn't as important as respect." The rest of their journey passed in comfortable silence, but something had changed between them. Zareth found herself watching Marcus work, appreciating the efficiency of his movements, the calm competence with which he handled the ship. He was not a warrior in the traditional sense, but he possessed a different kind of strength, a strength that came from choosing to do right even when it was difficult or dangerous. For his part, Marcus found himself thinking about the warrior woman recovering in his medical bay. She had lost everything, betrayed by the people she had served faithfully for decades, yet she showed no bitterness or self-pity. Instead, she focused on completing the mission, on saving people she had never met from a fate she could have easily ignored. As they approached the Kepler system, Marcus realized that somewhere in the past 30 hours, his feelings had shifted from simple compassion to something much more complex. This alien warrior, with her violet eyes and fierce pride, had somehow found her way into his heart. "Contact ahead," Zareth reported from the sensor station. "Human patrol ships." Marcus opened a communication channel. "This is the cargo vessel Second Chance requesting immediate priority transmission to Defense Force Command. We have critical information regarding the Keltharan Treaty negotiations." "Second Chance, this is Patrol Leader Jameson. State your business." Marcus glanced at Zareth, who nodded encouragingly. "We have intelligence regarding a planned massacre of Kepler 442b colonists. Patch us through to Admiral Hayes immediately." There was a long pause, then, "Second Chance, you are to follow us to the orbital station immediately. Admiral Hayes will meet you there personally." As they approached the human space station, Zareth felt a strange mixture of anticipation and fear. Soon she would face the consequences of her actions, whatever they might be. But looking at the determined human beside her, she realized that for the first time in her life, she was not facing the future alone. Admiral Sarah Hayes was a woman who had seen her share of impossible situations, but the scene in her briefing room challenged even her experienced perspective. A human salvage operator and a 7-foot-tall Keltharan warrior sat across from her, while holographic displays showed the movement of an entire enemy fleet toward the colony world below. "Let me understand this correctly," Admiral Hayes said, her voice carefully controlled. "You're telling me that in 18 hours, while our diplomats are celebrating a historic peace treaty, a Keltharan battle fleet will begin systematic orbital bombardment of our colonies?" "Yes," Zarath replied simply. 300,000 humans will die unless you act now." The Admiral studied the alien warrior's face. "And you betrayed your own people to warn us because it was right," Zarath said. "Because innocent people deserve to live regardless of their species." Marcus leaned forward. "Admiral, I know how this sounds, but she risked everything to get this information to us. Her own people tried to kill her for it." Admiral Hayes activated her communication system. "Get me a full scan of the outer system and patch me through to the treaty negotiations on the surface." She looked back at her unlikely informants. "If you're wrong about this, you've potentially destroyed decades of diplomatic work." "And if she's right," Marcus said quietly, "you'll have saved 300,000 lives." The next few hours passed in a blur of activity. Long-range sensors confirmed the presence of a massive Keltharan fleet holding position just outside the system's detection grid. The treaty negotiations were quietly evacuated under the pretense of a security drill. Civilian transports began moving people away from population centers. Through it all, Zarath worked alongside the human military officers, her intimate knowledge of Keltharan tactics proving invaluable. Marcus watched her with growing admiration as she calmly explained enemy battle formations and weapon capabilities to people who should have been her enemies. "The primary assault will come from the night side," she explained to the tactical team. 3 dreadnoughts will target the major cities while fighter squadrons eliminate the orbital platforms. They expect no resistance beyond basic planetary defenses. "What they don't expect," Admiral Hayes added grimly, "is the Third Fleet." Marcus felt a chill of anticipation. The Third Fleet was humanity's most powerful military force, supposedly conducting exercises 3 systems away. If they had been secretly repositioned. "They're coming out of hyperspace now," a technician announced. On the main display, dozens of human warships materialized in perfect formation. The Keltharan fleet, caught completely off guard, found themselves facing an enemy that should not have existed. The element of surprise, for once, belonged to humanity. The battle that followed was unlike anything Marcus had ever witnessed. The Keltharans, despite their numerical advantage, were forced to fight a defensive action against an enemy they had underestimated. Human ships, smaller and more maneuverable than their opponents, used hit-and-run tactics that frustrated the aliens' preference for direct confrontation. Zarath stood beside Admiral Hayes in the command center, watching her former comrades die in the cold emptiness of space. Her face showed no emotion, but Marcus could see the pain in her eyes. "Regrets?" he asked quietly. "For the lives lost, yes," she replied, "but not for the choice I made. They brought this upon themselves when they chose dishonor over peace." The tide of battle began to turn when the Keltharan flagship, Commander Veltar's dreadnought, broke through the human defensive line and began its approach to the planet. Its massive guns could devastate entire cities with single shots. "We can't stop it in time," Admiral Hayes said grimly. "Too many ships between us and the target." "I can," Zarath said suddenly. Everyone in the command center turned to stare at her. "The flagship's shield generators have a vulnerability that only someone with Imperial Guard access codes could exploit," she continued. "But I would need to be aboard the ship." "That's suicide," Marcus said flatly. "Even if we could get you there, you'd be facing an entire crew of your own people." Zarath met his eyes steadily. "Some things are worth dying for." "No," Marcus's voice was firm. "We find another way." But Admiral Hayes was already studying the tactical display. "There might be a way. If we could get a small ship past their defenses— The second chance, Marcus said immediately. She's fast enough. And they won't consider a cargo hauler a threat. Marcus, no, Zareth said, her composure finally cracking. I cannot ask you to risk your life again. You're not asking, he replied. I'm volunteering. The next 30 minutes were the longest of Marcus's life. The second chance, escorted by a squadron of human fighters, approached the Keltharan flagship under the cover of a larger assault. Enemy fire lit up the darkness around them as they closed the distance. Docking bay ahead, Marcus announced, fighting to keep his ship steady under intense fire. Hope you're ready for this. Zareth checked her captured weapons one final time. She had insisted on going alone, claiming that Marcus would only slow her down in combat. They both knew the real reason, though neither spoke it aloud. The second chance slammed into the flagship's docking bay with bone-jarring impact. Zareth was moving before they had fully stopped, her 4 arms wielding plasma rifles with deadly precision. Keltharan security forces rushed to meet her, but she had spent decades training with these same warriors. She knew every move they would make. Marcus followed despite her protests, his human rifle seeming primitive compared to the energy weapons around him. But he had advantages too. His smaller size and unexpected tactics allowed him to support Zareth as she fought her way toward the shield generators. Why? Commander Veltar demanded when they finally reached the command center. Why betray everything we stand for? Zareth faced her former commander without flinching. I betray nothing. You are the one who has forgotten what it means to be a warrior. There is no honor in slaughtering innocents. Honor? Veltar laughed bitterly. You speak of honor while standing beside human filth? This human has shown more honor in 3 days than you have in 30 years of service, Zareth replied coldly. The fight was brief, but vicious. Veltar was a skilled warrior, but Zareth fought with the fury of righteous anger. When it was over, she stood above his body, breathing heavily. The shields, Marcus reminded her urgently. Working together, they accessed the shield generator controls. Zareth's codes worked perfectly, dropping the flagship's defenses just as the human fleet arrived in attack formation. The mighty dreadnought, stripped of its protection, fell to concentrated fire from a dozen smaller ships. As secondary explosions began tearing through the flagship's hull, Marcus grabbed Zareth's hand. Time to go! They ran through corridors filled with smoke and flames, the ship dying around them. The second chance was exactly where Marcus had left it, though its hull showed fresh damage from falling debris. They launched just as the flagship's reactor went critical, the explosion lighting up space like a newborn star. The rest of the Keltharan fleet, seeing their flagship destroyed and their surprise advantage gone, retreated to hyperspace. The colony was safe. In the aftermath, as rescue ships collected survivors and damage reports flooded in, Marcus and Zareth found themselves alone on the observation deck of the orbital station. The planet turned slowly below them, its lights twinkling in the darkness. What will you do now? Marcus asked. Zareth was quiet for a long time. I am a warrior without an empire, a soldier without a cause. My own people will hunt me for the rest of my life. Maybe it's time to find a new cause, Marcus suggested gently. She turned to look at him, this remarkable human who had risked everything for a stranger. And what cause would that be? Peace, understanding between species, protecting those who can't protect themselves. He met her violet eyes steadily. There's a place for warriors like you in the defense force if you want it. Fighting alongside humans against my own people? Fighting alongside people who believe in doing the right thing, Marcus corrected. Species doesn't matter. Zareth felt something shift inside her chest, a warmth she had never experienced before. This human had shown her what true strength looked like. Not the physical power she had trained in all her life, but the moral courage to stand up for what was right even when it cost everything. And what of you? she asked. "Will you return to your salvage operations?" Marcus smiled. "Actually, I was thinking of making a career change. The Defense Force could probably use a good pilot." "You would do this for me?" "I'd do it with you," he said, reaching out to take her hand. "If you'll have me." For the first time in her life, Zareth understood what humans meant when they spoke of love. It wasn't the simple physical attraction her species knew, or the political alliances they called partnerships. It was this feeling of completeness, of finding someone who saw the world the same way you did and chose to stand beside you no matter what came. "I do not know how to love like a human," she admitted. "Then we'll figure it out together," Marcus replied. 6 months later, Lieutenant Commander Zareth Morthek stood on the bridge of the Defense Force cruiser Harmony, watching human and alien crew members work side by side. Her golden facial markings had been joined by new tattoos, human designs that spoke of friendship and chosen family rather than bloodline and conquest. Captain Marcus Chen stood beside her, studying the latest intelligence reports from the border sectors. Other Keltheran warriors had begun defecting to the human side, inspired by stories of the traitor who had found honor among former enemies. "Incoming transmission from Admiral Hayes," the communications officer announced. "Another colony ship under attack in the Vega sector." Marcus and Zareth exchanged glances. It was what they had signed up for, what they had chosen to dedicate their lives to, protecting those who couldn't protect themselves, standing between the innocent and those who would do them harm. "Set course for Vega," Marcus ordered. "Maximum speed." As the Harmony jumped to hyperspace, Zareth reflected on the strange path that had brought her to this moment. She had lost everything she once thought important, only to discover things far more valuable, a cause worth fighting for, people worth protecting, and love in all its messy, complicated, wonderful human forms. The universe was vast and dangerous, filled with those who would exploit the weak and destroy the innocent. But it was also filled with people like Marcus Chen, ordinary beings who chose to do extraordinary things simply because they were right. And perhaps, Zareth thought, as she watched the stars stream past, that was the most human trait of all, the stubborn refusal to give up, to accept that might made right, to believe that tomorrow could be better than today if someone was willing to fight for it. She had been bred to be a weapon, trained to kill without question or doubt. But this human had shown her a different way to be strong, a way to be truly powerful, the way of hope.